Today I'll be chatting with Dr. Pamela Fergusson about meeting your body weight goals on a plant-based diet. It's not uncommon to have concerns on both sides of the fence. Some people worry that they'll waste away on a plant-based diet, while others worry that they'll gain unwanted weight. In reality, a plant-based diet can be what you want it to be, just like an omnivorous diet. Today, Dr. Fergusson shares tips on how to craft a plant-based diet that fits your body weight goals, whether that means weight gain, weight loss, or staying right where you are. Dr. Fergusson is trained both as a registered dietitian and as a nutrition scientist. She obtained her PhD in international nutrition from the University of Liverpool and has lectured in nutrition at Ryerson University here in Canada and also in the UK. She's worked as a dietitian around the world for organizations such as UNICEF and the World Food Programme, and now runs a private practice here in British Columbia. Dr. Fergusson chooses a plant-based diet for herself and her children and loves helping others to do so in a way that is healthy, delicious, simple, and economical. I highly recommend her tasty recipes, her thoughtful blog, and her compassionate services as a registered dietitian. Welcome to Get Real Health. I'm your host, Dr. Chana Davis. This show cuts through the noise to give you science-based insights from real experts so that you can make smart, healthy choices. Dr. Pamela Fergusson, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you about a somewhat controversial topic, which is, can you meet your body weight goals on a plant-based diet, regardless of what those might be? I think there are a lot of preconceptions out there on both sides of this, and so I wanted to talk to you about the science and your personal experience as a dietitian.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
First of all, do you find that this is a common concern of clients of yours? What are the sorts of concerns that people have, and how do you respond to that when someone comes to you saying, I want to do this, but I'm afraid of this outcome, or can I achieve this goal within a plant-based diet?
Absolutely. It's a very common question. Probably about 40% of the clients who come to me do have goals in terms of weight loss. And so certainly it is on people's minds.
Mm-hmm. And I've also heard you speaking on the No Meat Athlete podcast. And so there's also another community that's very much thinking about the other side of it, is concerned that they don't want to compromise athletic performance, and they don't want to compromise their ability to build muscle. And can they do that on a plant-based diet? So I think it would be fun to get into both sides of that.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So let's maybe talk about the weight loss first, since that's one that you get a lot of clients interested in. And so what would be some of your advice on how to approach that within a plant-based diet?
Well, I want to start by saying that, when someone comes with a desire to lose weight, there's nothing wrong at all with having a desire to lose weight or to have a smaller body. We're certainly pressured toward having a smaller body in our society. Sometimes perhaps for the benefit of our health, sometimes perhaps to the detriment of our health. And I think it is important for me as a dietitian to speak with someone about their weights, and their goals. I do believe that there is a lot of validity to the health at every size approach. In other words, trying to pursue health, and within that, weight may change. In some cases, it may increase. In some cases, it may decrease. But weight on its own as a measure of health is a fairly poor measure of health, and it's really that we need to put together a metabolic picture for someone in terms of their health: weight, blood pressure, body composition, fat distribution on the body, so weight to hip ratio, and also triglycerides, cholesterol. These all together can paint more of a picture of metabolic health. However, people may have a desire to lose weight mostly for aesthetic reasons as well. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I think on an individual level, they're not doing anything wrong. But I think our society has a lot to answer for in terms of creating that desire for so many people, especially disproportionately among women. How much of that is racially biased? How much of that is looking to kind of erase women or remove their power, stop them taking up space? I think that there is something to be said for that. And certainly yo-yo dieting is very harmful to health. So all those things are true and make me cautious around weight management on its own. However, it is on the flip side certainly true that eating a mostly whole food and varied plant-based diet for most people in the population at a population level does lead to leaner bodies and to lower prevalence of overweight and obesity, diabetes, heart disease. And so we can see that there can be some benefit to a plant-based diet in terms of long-term weight management.
Now, I think that's interesting to get into because it is a very consistent trend across observational studies that vegans have a lower BMI. So when we think about all the different ways that diets can vary, what do you think are some of the features of a plant-based diet that actually point you in that direction?
Well, I think plant-based diet being high in fiber is one of the main reasons why people tend to have lower BMIs on a plant-based diet. Eating a lot of fiber is generally associated with better weight control. Also, eating a lot of fruits and vegetables is generally associated with better weight control. We're recommended as Canadians eat half of our plate from fruits and veggies, whether we're on a plant-based diet or not. However, I think people who are eating a plant-based diet are often more successful at meeting that goal. And fruits and vegetables do tend to be very rich in nutrients, but usually lower in calories. And that's generally true of a plant-based diet anyway, that if you compare a plant-based diet with an omnivorous diet, generally a plant-based diet is slightly lower in caloric density, and that's another reason perhaps. But we also have to look at selection bias.
Yes.
Groups tend to follow a plant-based diet. Are they following it for health reasons or for ethical reasons? Someone who is following a plant-based diet or predominantly plant-based diet for health reasons may be making other health choices, avoiding smoking, being more active. They may be more affluent. They may be more educated. Other types of behaviors and characteristics that tend to lead to leaner bodies as well. So I think, we have to look at the bigger picture too when we look at a plant-based diet.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up because as soon as I said it, I thought, you can't promise causation. That's a correlation, but I'm sure there are. I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are also plenty of like randomized controls showing what happens when someone switches to a plant-based diet. But it probably also, I'm sure it depends on what form of that diet they take, what they were doing before, and what else they change. But anyway, so it's an interesting trend, I suppose, and.
Yes, absolutely. So, when I'm looking at having people sort of maximize the potential benefits of weight management on a plant-based diet, I would certainly encourage them to follow the guidelines which are beneficial for health anyway, which would be including half of your plate coming from fruits and vegetables, choosing whole food sources of fat more often, and also, when we think of the vegan plate, I don't know if you've seen Ginny Messina's work, the vegan RD, but the plate is, here's our round plate and half of the plate is fruits and veggies. Then we have starches and grains is a quarter of the plate. And then nearly a quarter is the protein-rich foods, and then a slice for the whole food sources of fat, nuts and seeds, and maybe a bit of avocado. So, if you think of that type of proportion of plate and eating to hunger, then that is a diet that will, for most people, lead to good health outcomes as well as weight maintenance.
So how would that plate differ if your goal was to lose weight versus your goal was to, you're already thin and you're worried that you're going to waste away, or else or the third category, you're someone who's burning a ton of energy in athletic performance. How might that plate shift?
I would say the proportions of the plate for most people aren't going to shift all that much. It would be that you need to eat more food. If you are more active, you might need a little bit more starchy carbohydrate. For example, if you're an endurance athlete, you might need a bit more protein-rich foods. If you are a strength athlete, if you're an endurance athlete at very high level, you might need to also increase your protein intake a bit. So these are minor alterations, but really, for the most part, we can continue to follow that plate model and simply eat more calories if you are finding that you're losing weight, or if you are an endurance or strength athlete. If you've been eating quite low fat and you are losing weight, you might want to increase your whole food sources of fat just to increase the caloric density a little bit of your meals. So looking a little bit more often to nuts and seeds and avocado. Some people choose to include oils, some don't. I think for people who are otherwise healthy, a small amount of oil can be an enjoyable part of their day. However, there are some people who choose to avoid oils altogether, and that won't cause any nutritional problems as long as you are not avoiding fat altogether. You do need to consume fat, nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut. These are whole food sources of fat.
Yeah.
Olives.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the calorie density concept as a useful one for people to understand. Can you get into that, and how do you recommend that people use that?
I think it can absolutely be useful. So I think where the lowest calorie density foods tend to be, leafy greens are probably the lowest calorie density, and then maybe root vegetables, then maybe fruits, then probably grains, then legumes and soy products, high protein products, and then likely nuts and seeds would be at the top, and other, avocado, coconuts, those fat containing fruits, olives. I'm really taking that's running from memory there, or taking an educated guess on the list, but I think that's probably pretty close to accurate. And the thing is, if you eat closer to the top of that list, so more vegetables and fruits, then you're going to be getting a lot of nutritional density, so a lot of nutrients, but not as much caloric density, and you'll be getting a lot of fiber. So the concept is that you'll feel very full because you could eat, 10 oranges or something. Not that I'm suggesting you eat 10 oranges, but often these are the kinds of comparisons that are given. You could eat 10 oranges for the amount that's in one cheeseburger or something like that, and wouldn't you be more full on 10 oranges? These are kind of the arguments that are often. I think it's true to a point, but I do find that some people do respond very well in terms of satiety to high fiber, low fat, low caloric density, but high volume diets, whereas others do not feel satiated by that approach and actually do better making sure that they are consuming enough whole food sources of fat and protein in order to experience satiety.
Yeah, satiety is extremely personal, and I think it's probably both physiological and psychological.
I agree.
Yeah. My husband and I have been experimenting over the last year or so with doing intermittent fasting of sort of like a 5-2 diet. and it's been really fun. He doesn't find it quite as fun as I do, but fun to say like, okay, you've got a 500 calorie dinner. Let's each make our own 500 calorie dinner, and he eats dairy, and so I have this like gigantic salad thing, and he might have a quesadilla with like 2 slices of cheese or something like that. His looks a lot smaller, but he still is going to feel more satisfied if he has some of those elements that I don't know how much of it's psychological, or physiological, that he has a different notion of what it takes to have a satisfying meal than I do. But he definitely is. Wow, that's a lot. Sort of. It's
Right.
You really, when you set it out and you actually map it out, it can be quite a dramatic difference.
Absolutely, that's right. And, I do encourage people to explore what works best for them. I do encourage everyone, though, to try to stick with those general rules of trying to get at least half of your nutrients coming from fruits and vegetables. Even if you're a person who is more satiated by protein and by fat, you can still look to fruits and vegetables for half of your plate. Maybe choose something like avocado in the mix, but making sure that you're always adding protein and fat into your meals, which you can certainly do that whichever way you decide to approach nutritional density, including a bit more fat if you're a person and a bit more protein if you're a person who feel satiated by those, and maybe a bit less if you're a person that prefers a high volume approach. But I would say both, whatever your approach is, you should be including both. And in terms of intermittent fasting, I am actually a fan of that approach for some clients anyway. And it is also an approach that I use myself and have guided some athletes and a lot of clients through an intermittent fasting approach, sometimes 5-2, but much more often time restricted eating windows. Usually starting with just a 12-hour eating window, and then sometimes shortening that eating window a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of broaden our discussion to say that we've been talking about like the choice of which foods you're choosing, but there's also the aspect of when you're eating them and how much you're eating. So, and the interplay between those. So how, like when you're dealing with a client, how much are you focusing on each of those, or is it always a different mix for a different situation? And
absolutely, always a different mix. So in terms of food specifically and food intake, I tend to work in 3 areas. The first is what you're eating. So that would relate to this nutritional density, for example, and also relate to any convenience foods that you're including in your diet. The second being how much you're eating. So that's portion size and frequency of eating throughout the day. Because even if you're eating very healthy food, you can still gain weight on a plant-based diet. That does happen. I very frequently have people tell me, oh, I've been eating a plant-based diet or eating vegan for years and I'm gaining weight and I don't understand why. And so sometimes it falls into that category, or perhaps people are, eating all 4 of the plant-based food groups, but really emphasizing one group more than the others, maybe to the point that it is leading to weight gain. And it's often starchy carbohydrates that come up. And then the last thing would be when you're eating. And, some people do very well with frequent small meals throughout the day and snack throughout the day and meet their needs that way and are very happy with that. But I find for many people that actually they benefit from eating their meals within 12 hours of the day or less. And I also want I want to say, when I'm talking about all of these things, I don't actually feel, and this may be a bit controversial, but I don't actually feel that anyone owes anyone else their health. Like if health is not a priority for you and comfort, or you're in a difficult period, or you just really enjoy having Oreos at 11 p.m. or whatever it is, That's also great. And I want to say, as a dietitian, I'm not here to be a food police, and I'm here to help and guide if that's what you want and health is a priority and you're looking for guidance on that. But I'm very cautious to not say that this is the way that I think people should be eating or what they must do or something like that. It's not like that. People can eat how they wish to eat, and the way that that interacts with their health and their bodies is, I think, really their business. But if they want help with these things, I'm here and available to try to help.
Yeah, that's an important message to convey, that there's no set of rules, I guess, that people have to follow.
Yeah, that's right.
Or they don't have to want the same thing, I suppose, is sort of what you're
That's
saying.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Did what you said about the snacking triggered a podcast I listened to recently. I forget which one it was, but it was there was a researcher who studied the relationship between food quality and when it was consumed, and she observed that we tend to often our snacks are lower quality than our meals, and it's
Yeah.
presumably because we're actually planning a meal, and we take the time to think about what a meal should look like, and we might not do that with a snack. Anyways, that was just a simple insight in terms of just the value of actually planning, and the difference between when you just eat without thinking and when you eat when you plan.
That's true, but I think also there's an interplay between emotional eating, and it is more often going to happen like at the end of the workday or during maybe the 3 o'clock afternoon sort of slump, but
Mm-hmm.
most often at night. That's when we're less likely to sit down in front of Netflix and think, "Ooh, I really could go for a kale salad." It's
Mm-hmm.
really more often that that's the time people are going to look for something sweet or something crunchy and salty.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, so I think, and again, nothing wrong with that. However, if weight is an issue that you are concerned about, or your health in general, if you are noticing that you are developing hypertension or high blood sugar, or your cholesterol is rising, or one that I'm seeing quite often lately is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
Mm-hmm.
If these things are popping up for you and you're concerned, then the snacking may be something to start taking a look at, and I can certainly help with that too.
Mm-hmm. Is there, as we start to wrap up, is there anything you wanted to say about, in terms of weight loss myths or fads, and maybe to, um, clear up some, maybe some misconceptions?
Well, I think the biggest myth associated with weight is that I think a lot of people assume that just because someone is overweight, that means that person is unhealthy, or just because someone has a BMI in the normal range, that means that person is healthy. We actually can't really tell very well by looking only at weight how metabolically healthy a person is, or what their disease risk profile is likely to be. So it's very important to set aside those biases and try to kind of heal yourself, because I think we've all been affected by diet culture, and I think try and heal yourself of some of those biases, and look at any pain that you personally may have experienced as a result of diet culture, and then learn how to remove some of those biases from the way that you evaluate others as well.
Mm-hmm. That's really important to think about, always thinking about your why, right? Before you launch down a path.
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any last sort of maybe words of encouragement or advice for people who are contemplating a plant-based diet and unsure whether they can do so in a way that supports their body weight goals?
Absolutely. I mean, a plant-based diet is highly modifiable, um, you know, in terms of supporting your health goals, including your body weight, being able to meet your athletic goals, being able to, minimize your long-term health risks. All of this can be accomplished on a plant-based diet simply through the food choices that you make. But I would encourage everyone to be eating a varied, mostly whole food, high fiber, plant-based diet. And then within that, modifying for portion size and certain groups of food more so to meet your goals. And certainly speaking with a registered dietitian can help with that.
One last thing that maybe on the weight gain side, one thing that I've heard people say, or for those with very high calorie needs, that you can only eat so many beans, or the foods that are the most calorically dense and protein dense are kind of hard to consume huge amounts of. So advice for people struggling with that, and additional resources, I guess, for those on that side of the equation.
Sure. So I think eating more frequent meals, eating a snack later in the evening, adding more whole food fats, nuts and seeds to your diet is essential in order to increase the calorie density of your food. So, if you're looking to increase your weight, increasing the calorie density through increasing maybe more whole food sources of fat and protein. Also increasing the frequency of eating throughout the day, increasing your portion sizes, and adding a nighttime snack. I think those are all good ways to try to increase your body weight.
Okay, well, thank you. Any resources to leave people with for learning more?
I actually have just written a plant-based guide to weight loss and a plant-based guide for athletes, and they're available on my website at pamelafergusson.com. So you would find the answers to a lot of the questions that we posed today and more information in those guides.
Excellent. And I know your website has awesome recipes too, so I'm just going to put in a plug on your behalf too.
Thank
You
you.
have to we have to make it real, not just theoretical, right?
That's right. Absolutely.